So you're interested in photography, but you don't know what camera to use. Hey you guys, Nick here. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Nick. I'm a professional photographer. I've been shooting professionally for about 3 years now, though I've had a camera in my hand for the last 16. And for those of you guys who are joining me for another video, thank you so much. Make sure you guys are subscribed and you hit the bell notification. Today we're going to talk about the best camera for a beginner photographer. And a lot of you who have seen my videos before probably know that I use mostly Nikons. And this isn't a Nikon loyalty video. I only use Nikon because my grandfather used Nikon and I inherited a bunch of his lenses, and the old film lenses happened to work on the DSLRs, so I jumped into those bodies. So the first thing I want to discuss with you is, what do you have on hand? If you happen to have Canon lenses on hand, Olympus lenses on hand, or Nikon lenses on hand, it would be a good idea to start in that direction because you have some lenses on hand already for you to jump into the field with. Now, anything you do have on hand is better than not having anything on hand at all and starting from scratch, because the lenses are actually going to be the thing that costs you the most money, because the glass is really what makes the photo. The camera has very little to do with it, as I showed you guys in my 6 megapixel video, which I will link right there, where we used a really old Nikon. Now, if you're in the market for something new, there are some fantastic entry-level cameras by pretty much all of the manufacturers at this time. If you're looking for a DSLR camera, the Nikon D3500, and again, these are for new cameras, is about $400 with a couple of kit lenses. It's 24 megapixel. And everything I've read and heard about that camera is it's a pretty good camera. If you're more towards Canon, and from everything I've read and my experience with Canon, Canons are a little bit more user-friendly, though that camera is the Rebel T7. It's also 24 megapixels and it's about $400. So you're really close. It depends on what you're familiar with, what you may have on hand, or any reviews or things that you look into. In my opinion, Canon takes much better video than Nikon does, but Nikon generally has more options when it comes to lenses, so it depends on what you want to do. Now, if you want to jump into mirrorless, Sony has the Alpha A5100, I believe. Again, it is a 24 megapixel camera, but it is much more expensive in the $500 to $550 range. I don't have much experience with mirrorless. They are lighter cameras. Most of what I've heard about them is the battery life doesn't last quite as long, just because you always have the view on the back. But again, some more modern reviews are saying that the battery life is getting better and the cameras are lighter. Everyone's kind of going mirrorless. It could be the future. I personally like having an SLR camera. It's just personal preference, nothing wrong with that. And if you're looking for a more budget-friendly mirrorless camera, the Olympus EM10 is about $350, but it's only a 16 megapixel. I've owned Olympus film cameras in the past. Olympus is a good manufacturer. Sony, I've heard mostly only good reviews about Sony, so those are good options if you want a new entry-level camera. If you want the SLRs, the Nikon D3500 is a great entry-level camera. The Canon T7 Rebel is also a great camera. And then if you're looking more for the mirrorless, the Sony Alpha 5100, I believe it is, and the Olympus EM10 are both great mirrorless entry-level options. I believe those are all crop censored cameras, and that would be why they're a little bit cheaper. Now, one of my rules of thumb when you're getting into photography is I always tell people to buy a camera that has more features or more capabilities than they have, and that allows you to grow into the camera. I won't buy a new camera, and actually I need to buy a new camera. I'm looking at a Nikon D700, but I won't generally buy a new camera until I've shot it till the shutter has died, which I did with my D5100. I mean, the D5100 still kind of works. Or I've taken the camera to the limits of what is possible with that camera, and that's really rare. If you're looking to get in with a point and shoot, or even the Nikon Coolpix, I don't know the Canon version of the Coolpix, but those kind of point and shoot cameras where the lenses, you might be able to change them, but a lot of the times you can't. The manual mode is kind of manual mode, and you don't have the ability to hot shoe into strobes or anything like that. Generally, those are really fun kind of cameras to play around with, but if you're looking to be more serious with your work, you definitely want to start with either a consumer grade mirrorless or a consumer grade SLR, because you have a lot of features and capabilities with those cameras and really be able to push yourself into learning to use them, especially one with a proper manual mode, and I'll link my manual mode playlist right there for you guys. Now, if you don't mind buying used, I primarily buy used. And the reason for that is I can get a nicer camera with more features than the entry-level cameras for a cheaper price. So the Nikon D5300, which is actually the camera I am recording this with and my primary shooting camera right now, is also a 24 megapixel camera. It is an older model, but I was able to pick it up for about 250 bucks, which is $150 less than you can pick up the newest entry-level cameras, and you get the same megapixels, but the D5300 has a few more capabilities than the 3500 or the T7 Rebel does. So if you don't mind looking into used cameras, in that case I do say check your reviews, check YouTube videos, find out what flaws that camera has. I think it's the Nikon D610s, it might have been the 710s. They have a problem focusing on the left plane of the camera. Things along those lines. Also look at shutter speed. There are a number of ways to check the shutter count. A lot of times when you're buying on eBay, they'll provide a shutter count for you, and then you just compare that against the recommended shutter count for the camera. I think the 5300 is like 75 or 100,000 shutter clicks before it starts having issues. So definitely do your research on used cameras, figure out what you want. You can get a really good professional grade almost camera, a full frame camera used on an older model with less megapixels that will still take fantastic photos for you and be something that you can grow into to use as your entry-level camera, but you'd have to get it used, and it's a lot cheaper that way. Now let's get to the other side of this. What is the best lens to start out with? Because the camera is only part of it. The glass you have in front of the camera is actually what's going to make the photo. I recommend for when you're first starting out, whether you want to do street, landscape, or portrait photography, is a 50mm prime lens or the Nifty 50. I'll link that video right there and why the Nifty 50 is the X-wing of lenses. Now, like I said in that video, the Nifty 50 is a fantastic lens to start out with. It's low profile, it's light, and you can get a really fast lens for really cheap. They range anywhere between $79 for the Yongno, and I will link my review of that right there, all the way up to about $200 for the Nikon or Canon branded 50mm 1.8 lenses. Another lens I would look into getting is an 85mm prime. The kit lenses that come with the new cameras, those aren't bad lenses to get started with and to begin learning with. If you really want to up your photography game, I do recommend getting some good, fast lenses and get some great glass on the front of those cameras. They'll make a world of difference, I promise. So the biggest thing to take away from this, you guys, is the best camera for a photographer is whatever camera you can get your hands on, whatever you can actually go and shoot with. Now, I said that the point and shoots like the Coolpix or the Canon version of the Coolpix, whatever that one's called, are kind of, they don't necessarily have a real manual mode, or you can't hook them up to a hot shoe, or sometimes you can't replace the lenses on them. That doesn't detract from the fact that they are decent cameras. And what matters more than the equipment you have is going out and shooting, going out and taking photos and pushing yourself and learning to become a better photographer. So again, the newest entry-level consumer cameras that I would recommend is the Nikon D3500, the Canon Rebel T7. Both of those are 24 megapixel cameras at about the $400 mark. Or if you are interested in mirrorless, the Sony Alpha A5100, I think that's what it's called, or the Olympus EM10. Those are both entry-level mirrorless cameras. Totally depends on what you're looking for, how much weight you want to save, and what you prefer. Now, before you go out and buy any camera, I recommend going to a local camera shop or looking online and finding a place where you can rent a camera. Before you buy the camera, I do recommend renting the camera, going out for a weekend. Go do some street or some landscape landscape or some portrait photography with your family or your friends and kind of get a feel for the cameras. See if the interface works for you, if it's something that is user-friendly for you. Whether it is a used camera you were looking for or it is a new camera that you were looking for, I definitely recommend renting it beforehand and getting a feel for it before you commit with a purchase. So those are my recommendations, you guys, for the best camera to get started in photography and the best lenses to start with. I want to thank you guys again so much for joining me tonight. I know this video is a day late. We're still kind of settling into the new house, so this one was published on Sunday instead of Saturday. I apologize. We should be going back to the regular Saturday schedule. I do post every single week, whether it be Saturday, most likely, and sometimes on Sundays, and sometimes you guys get a midweek vlog. I'm hoping to publish one of those this week because I have some cool announcements to make. So please like, comment, subscribe. Please share this video if you enjoyed it, and you guys have a wonderful night, and I will catch you on the flip side. Bye.